Hey everyone, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. See, I promised Craig I would not do that, and I've done it twice now. Welcome to the Always Arsenal show. Well, it is quite pertinent, isn't it, Dr. Raj? Because it is good afternoon for you.
It is.
So welcome to the Always Arsenal show. I've always wanted to get you on, and what with the time difference and the fact that you're busy, and we've managed to get you on, so I'm so pleased. And I know we have a limited amount of time, so I'm not going to talk too much. Welcome to the Always Arsenal show. Albert, welcome back.
Welcome back, PG. It's a pleasure and an honor to meet Dr. Raj, man. This is made by Friday night, man.
I know. How exciting is all this? We've got a real doctor on the show, and he's a Gooner. We're going to get into that. So, everyone, before we start, welcome in the chat room. I can already see you there. Give us about 10 minutes and then throw us some questions to Dr. Raj. I've got a couple to ask him as well. Once Dr. Raj goes, me and Albert will be covering a lot of today's news and West Ham and stuff like that. But we're going to just get on with the show. This is number 17. I can't believe I've done 17 shows. This is the 17th. I can't believe it. Anyway, let's get going. Dr. Raj, thank you for taking your time out from your patients to talk to me and Albert and everyone in the chat room. So I just want to know a few standard things. First of all, based in LA, yep.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to support Arsenal?
I started supporting Arsenal when I was 8, so in 94. And being in the States, I remember it was like on some random channel, Fox Sports, I saw the crest. And, being a kid, I was like, oh, I like that crest. And then so I started following the team. And then, of course, Wenger came a couple of years later. And so naturally, I developed that affinity. The hardest part back then was, of course, there just wasn't that much access to the Premier League, right? It's not like what it is now in the States where you have access. But so I was just trying to, doing my best to follow. And I think when something's harder to follow, you become even more committed to it. And so ever since then, obviously the team became very, very good under Wenger, which is helpful. But then I followed along ever since then.
That's amazing. So literally it was the crest and you thought, so did you like, or as you call it, soccer over there? Was you into soccer?
Yeah, I grew up playing. So I was always into it. And I always, you hear about the Premier League, but again, in 94, the internet wasn't like massive, right? So it's just hard to access it. And so I saw the crest, I saw some highlights, and then I used to always play, football video games too.
Yeah.
And so one thing led to another. And so there you go.
Oh, that's amazing. So, okay, time difference, LA. It's noon for you, just gone noon now.
Mm-hmm.
So when Arsenal play at 8 o'clock at night, it's quite good as long as you haven't got any patience. But what happens when it's a 12:30 kickoff? Do you record it or do you watch it live?
No, I watch it live.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, it's at 4:30. I wake up 4:15, get up, brush, get some coffee, and you watch, right?
And then sets you up for the day if we win, but if we lose.
Yeah, then it's a long day of suffering. But I don't mind the morning games because I can watch it without anyone else being awake. And so no one bothers me.
No, I totally get that. Thanks to everyone in chat for all your hellos and big ups. Welcome to. Please press like. I never say it and I really need to say it. Hi, Fiona. Yeah. Welcome back to the show. Dr. Raj, favourite player? I'm going to ask you the standard questions, then when I want to get into the medical stuff. And I'm sure Albert's got a couple of things to ask.
Mm-hmm. All time or current?
Yeah, let's do old time and then do current.
I mean, Henry has to be by far. And then current, it's a tough one. Current is so difficult. Saka, of course, Odegaard. I love Ben White, just how he controls the game with his distribution. Odegaard, I really enjoy just because of what he contributes on and off the pitch. Pretty clear he's going to be the next captain, in my opinion, just based on what we've seen. Based on him talking, speaking in Spanish with Mikel, as we had the reports recently. So I really enjoy. Honestly, it's so hard now. And I think it speaks to the quality of the team and the characters, right? It's so difficult now to pick a favorite player. And so, yeah, if I had to say, I would probably say, oh man, probably Saka overall.
Okay,
Sure.
cool.
Can't go wrong.
What's your favourite ever match? Well, first of all, have you ever been over here to the Emirates or not? Or
I haven't.
Highbury? No.
I haven't. I have family. I'm actually going to be in London in late July, but I think it coincides with Arsenal being in the States. So great,
Well,
perfect
they've got
timing.
the Emirates Cup you could go to at the end of July. It depends if you're still
Yeah,
here.
it just depends on specific timings, and I'm there for a wedding, so I might just have to leave the wedding. Now there's priorities, so we'll see. We'll see.
So
Yeah,
your
so if it
favourite
works
ever
out-
match?
Oh man, woo! There's so many. I mean, I think the classic, the 2-0 Tottenham, given the was one of my favorites. So that always comes up to me. And so there's so many. Some of the games at versus Bayern on the return legs, right? Were always fun to watch. So man, it's such a difficult one. I can tell you my least favorite match was the Champions League final. So
Oh, I was there, Dr. Rod.
oh my goodness.
no.
Oh, I was there. It's my first and only ever European away. I've never been to one. That was it. That was the only one I've been to. And it was a sad evening. I couldn't talk on the plane from France on the way home. Okay, so where you work, where you live, is anyone else into Arsenal in the hospital where you are?
I think maybe you'll see. I wouldn't say directly to me. You'll see people like out and about in LA who wear Arsenal gear, right? But unless they're typically from the UK, no one waking up at those times or watching consistently, right? So not to this, not to the extent that I can really have in-depth conversation with them.
No, I totally understand. Okay, so tell us what you specialize in.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I'm physiotherapist, doctor of physical therapy, specializing a lot of it's sports medicine, a lot of it's training. I work with players also like on technique and training techniques, movement mechanics. So it's kind of just across the board, sports med, movement, and training.
Because I did notice, actually, I think we followed each other for quite a while. Last year, one of our players had an injury on the pitch, was taken off. And your tweet popped up. And I thought, first of all, I always think, is he a real doctor? Because a lot of people obviously lie on social media.
I have a check mark, man. I have a check mark.
You do. And it was quite weird because you'd actually said completely opposite to what anyone else had said, and then you were correct when it came out like 48 hours later. It was just about one of our players. So I just want to talk to you about Kieran Tierney and Thomas Partey.
Yeah.
Tierney seems to consistently get injured, and we desperately don't want that. Partey, not consistently, but he's getting injured now and again. Now, for me, I'm going to ask you, is it physical, muscular, or is it mental, a lot of these injuries? Let's just talk with Tierney. What's your take on him?
So what I see with Tierney, one, he plays at such a high intensity, right? He puts a lot through his body when he's out there. Like, I think there's an interview with Arteta where he's like, even in practice, we have to be like, dude, relax. Like, you got to pull off the reins sometimes. He's always going full bore. That puts a lot of overload to your body. And obviously we've seen the responsibility he's had, especially when he had to play high and wide on the left side, responsibility both ways. So he's the type of guy who's always going full out, and that opens you up then to some injuries. And then unfortunately, once you have one injury, it dents your fitness. So that when you do come back, you're now at risk for more injuries. So that's what I see with Tierney. I think he's a guy you're going to always need some cover behind him just because of how hard he plays and the energy he puts into the game. Now he's picked up a good amount of injuries, and so you're going to have higher risk factors. And then part of it, honestly, when he was at Celtic, he played through a lot of injuries for them. Like, he had this pubic issue he played with for almost a year for them. And so he went through that, and that doesn't help, right? Like, he was a big part of their team, but playing through injuries always has a knock-on effect. It always does. Ask Tomiyasu.
So the term injury prone, then you don't sort of agree with that, or do you? Because you're saying that because he's such a tough player and the intensity he plays at, he's bound to get injuries. I think sometimes players are injury prone. They just keep getting injured. Like there was an ex-Tottenham player many years ago called Darren Anderton. They used to call him Sick Note. Do you remember Sick Note? Because he was consistently, and you look at Robin van Persie every season for about 9 years, he was injured. So go on.
I say, injury prone to me is superficial. To me, when you have to dig deeper about why the player is getting injured, I think in Tierney's case, you can make the case he's injury prone because he doesn't really know how to let off the gas, right? So it opens himself up to certain injuries. And so to me, that's a very big term. What I look at is really the more details. There are some players who've suffered multiple contact injuries. That to me isn't injury prone because that's football, right? You're going to take physical contact. If you get hit hard enough, sometimes you're going to get injured. It's just what it is. That to me isn't injury prone, right? So in Tierney's case, I think there's definitely some concern in that regard, just because of some of the reckless abandon that he does play with.
That's so interesting, isn't it, Albert? Because I've never really thought that Tierney gets injured because he works so hard and he's so intense in his games.
Yeah, and as Dr. Raj said, he had a plethora of injuries at Celtic. I think he missed a total of over 42 games. Arsenal, he missed over just under 50 games, I think. That's a lot of games. He's only 24. And it's interesting you mentioned about certain players and whether it's the term injury prone, whether that's kind of overused. But I remember with Steven Gerrard in his early part of his Liverpool career, he was injured every other week. Andy Carroll is a perfect example, probably in terms of modern day footballer, where his body consistently breaks down. Is that just him being unlucky, Dr. Raj, or is there something physically about him where he keeps breaking down, for example?
It really depends on the type of injury. So we had mentioned Partey, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a great example. So with Partey, we have to really look at why it's happening. His injury record at Atletico was great, right? Like tremendous. Came into Arsenal. There's a reason for this. Came into Arsenal. He had no preseason with the team, right? Came in right away to the Premier League, which we know from the data has a higher level of intensity. It requires the most short burst sprints of any league in football of the big league. So that's already a higher workload through your body, right? Higher intensity he's not used to. He picked up one muscular injury, then similar injury, almost a re-injury, but it wasn't. And so he fell into this cycle of where he got injured, his fitness starts to fluctuate, right? And so then now you're at risk for more injury. So you have this soft tissue injury, re-injury cycle that begins. And it's very difficult to get out of that during the season because you need time to rebuild it. And that's why we saw him come back this season and for a good part of the season. He had a contact injury, but you can't do anything about that terrible challenge, right, in preseason. So he came back this season and he was pretty healthy until, again, he picked up another muscular injury, and that was a re-injury from last year. So that's always a concern now with muscular injuries, is that the highest predictor of future injury for muscular injuries is previous injury. And so that's always going to be built into that, unfortunately. And especially the higher intensity of the games, and he has a lot of responsibility on his plate, especially with I thought that was moving towards playing Xhaka higher up the pitch, right? And Partey was more kind of that lone sixth midfielder, so he had a lot more responsibility as well, which can put more fatigue on you, right? And so that's all part of it. But at the same time, he's also now had almost 2 years now to adapt to Premier League intensity, right? Have Arsenal strength and conditioning team work with him as well. So we'll really see, I think, with this summer into next year, how he fares in terms of his injury record.
So how do we prevent it? How can we stop Tierney and Partey? Because they're so important to us.
And there's more over the years as well. That's with Arsenal, particularly.
Always. And I mean, Tomiyasu's back, and what a flipping difference he's made already. How are we going to protect the players that get injured? And just, sorry, one other question. I'm slightly confused a little bit because you're talking about intensity and, I get that. But Ian Wright, back in the 90s, early 90s, he couldn't have been more of an intensity player. He literally lived on that tension. He didn't really get injured. I don't remember sitting here thinking, oh, he's injured again. Is it just some players?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, with Wright, he was adapted to that. With Partey, he wasn't adapted yet to the league because it was his first year there. He didn't have that stable preseason to go through with the team, right? So there's so many variables that go into players' fitness and decreasing injury risk. So that's the thing. On the outside looking in, we maybe know like 10%, if that. If I might know 5%. So imagine what someone who doesn't have, that background may or may not know, right? So, and to your question about prevention, I mean, the biggest thing you can do is proper habits, strength and conditioning, proper nutrition, and they do all these things. These guys are monitored. The sports science that's used now is incredible. And so, but injuries are part of the game. And honestly, I know I hear the jokes about Arsenal and the injury record. The data over the last 2 seasons, we're a top 5 club in terms of minimizing injury loss.
Wow.
So we never used to be.
No.
Yeah. So it's changed significantly. I think part of that, I think again, when in Mikel's first interview, he said that a big thing we have to do here is get everyone's fitness up to the par we need because they would tire out. And I think this past offseason, again, I saw an interview with him. He's like, finally, we're seeing the data from the sports science that shows our fitness is actually where it needs to be. But it took almost 18 months to get there. So, these are long processes.
Sorry, Manda. With all that said, in regards to Thomas Partey, then, I mean, we've only got 4 games left.
Yeah.
And I remember that image, obviously, when we played Tottenham in the North London Derby at their ground, and the image of Arteta pushing him back on the pitch. Is it worth the risk then playing him this season? I don't think there is, personally.
I don't think he's coming back for Tottenham. I know people got, they saw him on a bicycle and on a treadmill running at like 3 miles per hour. And we're like, oh, he's coming back. And so I put information out on that. I highly doubt he comes back.
Yeah, I don't think he will.
But what's the risk reward, right? What's the reward? Especially, with El Neni now, they're playing well. Who stabilized the midfield a little bit. They're playing quite well. And so let's say you bring Partey back, he gets hurt again. And now you've completely compromised his summer. His summer now is going to be rehab again, rather than trying to rebuild for preseason. So I think the risk reward, unless there's just like some sort of complete miracle where he's healed, that doesn't happen in real life. And so I'd be very, very surprised for him to come back.
I agree.
So if you see a player go down injured, come off, and as you're watching him being treated, do you know straight away what's wrong with him?
Typically, you can kind of tell a few indicators, right? One, where are they grabbing at, right? Which can tell. But even with that, it depends on where it is. So like we know, for example, the foot and ankle is very precise with pain location. Like if you touch somewhere, it's very common. That's where like the injury is. Whereas the closer you go to the low back and the core and the hips, there's a lot of referral patterns. So it's not always as accurate. But if at the knee and below, hamstring obviously is a very common site, right? You see someone grabbing at the back of the leg, very, very commonly the hamstring. And so that's an indicator. Secondly, what the physio is testing, hands-on assessment, will give me some information. And then also just the player's reaction while testing is going on or talking to the physio, you can see some things. And then even the player's reaction when they come off, like for example, last week, when Tomiyasu came off, people were scared, but then I saw him just nod his head, I'm okay, to Stuvenberg, right? And so right away to me, and then he was on the bench. He didn't even go back to the physio room to get checked out. So right away, these are all indicators. Okay, this is very likely not an issue.
So funny you should say that, because I was at the West Ham game and I was sitting not with the Arsenal fans, and Tommy was coming towards us, and I looked down and I said to Jeff Arsenal, which I'll talk about West Ham later, I said to him, he's not gone down the tunnel. This isn't bad.
Yeah.
He would be down the tunnel, and we were looking. It was a bit awkward to see, but I swear he went back to the bench, and that's what I could see from where I was sitting. And thank God. And it was preventative and cramp and whatever else it was. Yeah. But, you know, we need him. And I agree with you. I do not want to see Thomas Partey unless he's 100% fit. And something else as well. He won't be match fit. So I don't think El Neni is motivated. He's doing really well. You know, he's part of the team in the last few games. Just stick with it, because I want Partey to have a summer. I want him to have that proper pre-season. So we have got the beast that we are expecting to see come August, you know.
Agreed.
So interesting. God, it really is. Because I always just thought, oh, you know, injury-prone people. That's it, just injury-prone. But when you talk about it, the intensity side, that's so cool. Guys in the chat room, if you want to ask any questions, I will ask him. Albert, have you got anything else you want to ask Dr. Raj about injuries and things?
It's just interesting, because obviously I think you make a good point, Dr. Raj, in regards to football has changed a lot from, and Manda made the point about Ian Wright and intensity to sort of now, and you know the sports science behind it, because there were so many rumors about Arsenal players over the years about the training ground being an issue possibly for injuries, but the way you've sort of broken it down has been brilliant, really. So I just think, like I said, in particular with Thomas Partey, I just think, like you mentioned, from a sort of a rehabilitation point of view, it makes no logical sense for him to play again this season. And I'd be very, very shocked if it happens.
I mean, and again, Mikel's pretty honest. He said, like, it's very, very likely he won't play, right? It's a significant injury. It's a re-injury. He said it from the start. The thing with muscular injuries, they can evolve very, very quickly. That's why he didn't rule them out. Because sometimes you can have a guy, you're going to have an average timeline, but there's always, you know, outliers, right? So all they do, they're going to take him through progressions, see how he responds, and then you go day by day. And that's really why they don't really I haven't seen a timeline from Arsenal in a while. I think since Xhaka's injury, I think they're going away from really putting that timeline on players. Multiple reasons. One, because rehab now is becoming much more of a day-to-day, let's see how you feel process. I think secondly, you don't want to put that pressure on the player or even your medical staff, right? What if the player doesn't come back at that time? Now what happens? All the players are saying, oh, you know, the player, they didn't come back. Why? And no one really understands the rehab part, right? So now they start thinking, oh, something's wrong at the club, or the medical staff is doing something wrong. And so I think they're getting away under Arteta from putting that pressure on players and on the staff. And I think that in general is a big part of what has made him so successful, is that he's putting everyone in a place of comfort and an environment that's that they enjoy being in, rather than that negative environment. He talked about that in his interview today, right? Where everyone's happy to come, happy to be a part of the club. Everyone's talking positively. So you see these little things he's done, and it all adds up.
Okay, so I've got a really good question, actually, from one of our watchers, and he's actually a friend of mine, Danny, the GFP from the Bergkamp Wonderland. Go on, Danny. What are Dr. Raj's thoughts on stem cell technology for bad injuries?
So, I mean, it's almost too general to answer, because stem cell has so many different variations. And then what does bad injury really mean, right? So like stem cell, the research shows it can be helpful for certain injuries, but also at certain times for the injury, right? So research is quite, and even then it depends on the practitioner, because stem cell can be administered in multiple different ways. So you have ultrasound guided stem cell, which is very targeted, but that's like the highest level. And then others are just trying to like just putting it in there and seeing what happens, right? And so it's kind of, research is still out on it, but I think for elite footballers, where, you know, price is no object, you can try and see what happens. And sometimes you'll see a stem cell injection applied when things aren't healing quite as effectively as you might have wanted. So you can try to use the stem cell to jumpstart the healing process. But again, it's still like there's really like no solid proof that it really, really helps. But again, at elite football, when price is no issue, and it's like might as well try it. So, but it just varies.
Thank you, Danny. Okay. Hi, Abby, welcome to the show. Question: I'm worried about Saka and ESR. They've done so much for us the last 2 years. Will they be injury prone in the future, Doctor?
I think the opposite. So you have younger players who are still developing physically. They're holding up really, really relatively well. I mean, ESR has some muscular issues, right? Saka has done quite well. He gets fatigued, but this is still when they're developing physically. And so imagine as they get that strength and conditioning base and it improves, it's actually going to be to me, it's the opposite. If I'm not seeing that right now and they're able to play consistently, and remember, a lot of their availability, it's not guesswork. It's sports science. You can see when someone's in that red zone, right? You have all these metrics. So if they're able to handle this intensity right now, and as they get stronger physically, mentally, they're going to be able to consistently handle that consistency. The concern always is if you pick up like a contact injury. And I think that's why people are concerned with Saka, because you see him getting hit more and more often.
Yeah.
Right. So that's and ESR is going to be the same. All these guys, players, teams know we can try to go after them, especially if they're not being protected. Right.
Absolutely. And that was Saka's argument recently, wasn't it? When he brought it to the forefront, you got to protect me a little bit. And I've noticed it more now since he said that, actually. Some great questions. Thanks, Abby. Right. Next one. Welcome to the show. Hi, Phil. Question: does Dr. Raj think the percent of players playing with some kind of injury is higher than players playing totally injury-free? That's a good question.
It is. I think the first thing to discern between here, what is an injury, what is not. There's normal pain and discomfort that I guarantee you at this part of the season, every single player has, right? Niggles here and there. And so I would say to that, significantly higher. Overt injury, that's harder for me to say. I would say likely not, just because, especially now with this, I think this Arsenal medical staff is very aware of what can happen when you allow players to play with an injury. I think Tomiyasu was case in point. He tried to play through the calf injury because Suarez was out with the hip injury, and he had another injury. Then he picked up another calf injury. And that's a consistent theme you see that I always bring up. Trying to play through injury can always lead to issues. Like De Bruyne started the season, he played through a high ankle sprain after, I think, 2.5 weeks in the Euros. And he wasn't himself for like 6 weeks into the season after that, right? So obviously not an Arsenal example, but there's so many examples of that. In terms of discomfort, every single person right now, player, is managing some sort of discomfort. I almost guarantee it's just part and parcel with how many games have been played, right? I mean, that's a lot of activity you're putting through yourself.
That's really interesting, actually. I never really think of that with De Bruyne, with his sprained ankle. There's no point ever bringing him back early. Right. Danny just wants to follow up saying Joe Rogan swears by it for jiu-jitsu injuries. He must mean stem cell, because I think that's what we were talking about. I don't know who Joe Rogan is. Is that embarrassing that I don't know who he is?
Not necessarily. No.
Who is he?
He's a big like the biggest podcaster in the US, in the world. Yeah, podcaster.
Oh, I think I've heard the name, but I didn't know what it was. Right. Yeah. Okay.
But Rogan says, let's just say Rogan says a lot of things, and he swears by a lot of things that I may not agree with, or a lot of things don't agree with. So
okay,
that's the danger. But that's the danger of trusting. That's why you have research, right? One thing can work for one person doesn't mean it works for everybody else. Like, there's a story my cousin used to tell me. He's an MD who said, I don't know if it's true anymore, but the oldest living person in France was a lady like 115 years old. She had smoked cigarettes since she was 14. Does that mean cigarettes now, make you healthier, right? Based on her example? No, it's one person outlier.
Yeah, very lucky.
Anecdotal evidence, right? So one person swearing by it doesn't really mean anything in the end.
No, of course. And he's probably not a doctor. Right. Thank you, Dan. Right. Hatchie964. Are there any injuries that are worse for men than women and also worse for women than men?
Generally, it's so hard to say. I would say less in terms of gender specific, more in terms of activity specific, right? That's how I would categorize it, because the demands on the body are going to be different, more so depending on the activities you're doing, rather than only thing I think of gender specific would be like some of the sexual organs, or that's all I could really think of in that regard. But not completely my expertise right there. So
okay, cool.
Great question. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Hatchie. Next one, Uncle Melvin. With all the forensic scans that are available to clubs like Arsenal nowadays, is there any excuse for bringing a player back too early?
So scans aren't, here's a secret. Scans aren't the end all be all, right? There's plenty of evidence showing, more and more evidence showing, that a scan does not often even correlate with pain or discomfort, right? So the biggest thing now isn't the scan. It's about how is that player responding to activity progressions. If scans are the end all be all, you wouldn't even need physios. You wouldn't need strength and conditioning, right? You say, oh, scan's good, you're back on the pitch.
Yeah.
We know that's not how it works, right? So someone can be healed with the scan, but still be experiencing pain and discomfort. Pain and discomfort and fitness, they're multifactorial issues. It's not quite as simple as just a scan on the body, and it's a very complex system.
Okay. I've learned so much tonight. I feel like I could be a doctor.
You and Joe Rogan.
Yeah. I don't like these people that do things like that. You've got to stick to what you know. And most people in this world don't know what doctors know. This is that's another conversation.
I mean, there's so much in the medical world. There's so much in the medical world. I maybe know like 2%, right?
Yeah.
That's why you refer out, what we call refer out.
Absolutely. And you're a specialist in that. You're not a specialist in heart surgery or something. So
exactly.
I'm not a specialist in any of it. So let's just keep to podcasting. Right. Albrecht Schultz. Hiya, evening all fun. Tell on my birthday. Happy birthday, Albrecht.
Happy birthday.
Oh, that's so sweet. Fantastic insight. How does Dr. Raj rate the Diaby injuries? Was he injury prone or just unlucky? And before you answer, I was going to bring up Diaby and I completely forgot. So thank you, Albrecht, for doing that.
Yeah, so if you look at Diaby, he had muscular issues, but a lot of his stuff started after he had that really bad, he had a really bad leg break, right? And so that is what I talked about earlier. When you have a really bad injury, you're out for a long period of time, your fitness levels drop. And now you're at higher propensity for injury for everything else. So once you get into that cycle, right, it becomes really difficult. Like another example recently is Hazard at Madrid. He had an ankle fracture, right? Came back, multiple soft tissue injuries, multiple muscular injuries. He never got out of it. So typically when you look at guys who are quote unquote injury prone, they have some significant injury where it all stems from. And then with Diaby, with a bad leg break, it might have changed how he's moving. It might have changed his mechanics. Is it going to change him mentally? Is he now fearful of certain movements, what we call kinesiophobia? So there's a knock-on effect with all these aspects. And so I would say unlucky, because that contact, it was a contact injury that really, really set him back.
Such a shame.
Oh my
God. So sorry for him.
Absolutely.
Oh dear. Thank you, Alb. I'm sure I'm saying your name wrong, but I'll call you Alb. Thank you, Alb, and have a great birthday. Okay, another question from Adigan. At elite level, Doc, what are the key fatigue metrics? Cheers, quality chat this. Thank you. It's great. So interesting. We haven't got him for long, so come on, Doctor. What do you reckon on that one?
Yeah, so a big thing is going to be, it's less of a metric, but it's more of just how the player is feeling, right? So based on assessment, that's why a lot of like when someone Ben White, for example, Mikkel said today, oh, we're going to see how he feels today and then tomorrow. So you want to see how they're responding to certain things. You're going to see how they are in training, but then added to that, you have certain biometrics you can look at to see metabolically, and you have a baseline reference point for that. And you can compare it. So that's the sports science aspect. So you have the data, and you also have the more qualitative aspects as well.
Okay. I love it. You just know everything. It's brilliant. Yes, Albert, go on. You go next if you've got a question.
Yeah, I just want to ask about at the time when we had Jack Wilshere.
Yeah.
Do you think it was more of a case of where he had so many injuries, is a case of sort of taking accountability of himself to sort of not change his game, alter his game in order to have a more of a prolonged career? Because at times I felt he was a little bit too gun-ho and a little bit reckless in his style of play.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Wilshere himself has said he wishes he would have listened more to the physios back then. He said it himself. He said he didn't take it as seriously as he should have. He really pushed himself. He rushed himself back at times. Again, same point, right? When you rush back and you play through injuries, there's a knock-on effect. There is. And we know with Wilshere, especially with ankles, once you have an injury once, or once you turn it once, you're at a higher propensity for re-injury. If you constantly try to rush back, your risk goes up even higher. And then, like you said, he's also a player who played with a little bit high risk. And so you add all those things up, and you have a player with a series of injuries. And, that to me might be like case in point, because his talent level still is very, extraordinary, right?
No, sorry, I'm just putting my charger back in.
You did.
Anything else, Al, before I go to any more questions?
That was the main one to ask about Jack Wilshere. So thank you, Raj. Perfect.
I was thinking more about Diaby, but of course Wilshere.
Yeah, cool.
Such a shame, honestly, these players. Okay, curved glass 1, 2, 3. Is it more a case of not being mentally robust enough when players are out for lengthy periods?
It's so hard to say. I mean, it depends on the injury type. It depends on how you're rehabbing. I mean, I'm not, and it's very speculative to say whether it's mental or not, right? So I'm just not quite sure on that. So there's certain players. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
I mean, I think there are certain players you can push harder because they might be able to take it. There's some you cannot. I wouldn't say it's mentally robust or not. You have to understand which factors may be playing a part there. Sometimes, honestly, being mentally robust is a negative, because you're going to have what we just talked about with Wilshere, a guy who's like, oh man, I have it meant, I'm ready to go. So you got to pull the reins back, right? Yeah. So I think there's a double-edged sword there, fine line between being courageous and stupid. There's a very fine line. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I can imagine there are some players that go, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine to play on Saturday. Jack Wilshere probably being one of them. And he probably had a little niggle, but no, I'm fine. And he makes it worse. So yeah, I sort of get that. Thank you. Okay, so Abby again. Salah, Mane, Jota, Diaz play with the highest intensity, but they never seem injured. I wonder why.
Well, Salah actually has multiple injuries. If you actually look at it, he has a shoulder injury, he has an ankle injury as well. Diaz is hard. I don't even know. I don't know Diaz I don't think we can include Diaz in there. He's only been there since January, right? And so Mane has a pretty incredible injury history from the intensity he plays at. I think part of it with these guys is also that they have a great rotation up front too, and so that's why that's why Klopp brought Jota in. He brought Diaz in. Yeah. He saw these guys starting to get on the tail end and say, hey, they need some help up front, right? And so they still have, Firmino's injured right now, but they have him up front right now as well. I mean, Liverpool had a great injury record until last season. Yeah. And that was just one of those years where, Van Dijk went down contact injury. Joe Gomez had a freak patellar injury while on international duty, where like his foot got caught and he tore his patellar, his tendon on his kneecap. So last year to me was really an outlier for them. Their medical staff is incredible. If you look at right now, other than Firmino, they have no injuries, and that's while they're still playing in the hunt for what the quadruple. So it's incredible. Man. It's incredible. They have a great staff. They do a really, really good job with their training. But at the same time, these are players who've now been with Klopp now for how long has it been now? How long has he been there for now? I can't even remember.
But 5-6 years, yeah, probably about that.
Yeah, and so you have the synergy between Klopp, his medical staff, his training staff, right? They're now training players who are now fully adapted to what Klopp wants, right? And that's what Mikel said when he came in, that I need these guys to adapt. It took 18 months to get there. So the longer you have, something people overlook, the longer you're together as a team, the longer you're together with a coach, the longer you're together with a strength and conditioning team and physios, right? The more and more robust you can make those players.
Wow. Brilliant questions tonight. Carl Stark, welcome to the show, Carl. Didn't Tony Adams have something wrong with his back that gave him problems with his knees?
That I need to look into more. I don't remember that one exactly off the top of my head.
So different areas of the body are going to affect different areas of the body.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it's all connected, right? If it's not connected, you have other problems. So, I mean, when you're injured on one side, you're going to compensate. It's all like it's one big chain. So if one area is impacted, other areas take up stress. Like the analogy I use is like when you're in a team project and one person does nothing and the other three people are burned out, that's how the body is. If one part is injured, the rest of it is now going to get burned out too, right, over time. So
true. Yeah, that's common sense, really, isn't it? I'll keep going until you tell me you've got to go, Doctor. But I can't believe we've had 40 minutes already.
No, quick.
I know, because he's so interesting. He is, isn't he? Right. One of our other boys that actually I'd forgotten about was Aaron Ramsey. Was the same as Diaby and had loads of injuries after his terrible injury. Did you see what happened to Diaby on Ramsey on the first from Shawcross? Did you know straight away it was serious?
Oh, I think, you saw what was going on. The reaction of the players is going to tell you a lot too, right? So I didn't know what exactly it was. I mean, I wasn't even trained at the time, but I think you could tell it was significant at the time, right? Just based on the reaction and the tackle as well. And so, but yeah, same pattern applies here. I think that's the key. After you have a significant injury, there could be significant downstream effects.
Okay. We've got so many questions. Back to Danny. I like this question.
Good
Dr.
question,
Raj, how can you explain how Ronaldo is doing so well aged 37? Is he an android?
It's habits. What you see with players who are older is you see who took care of themselves from the start. And it's really the back end of the career where you see how players have taken care of themselves. And you know what, Ronaldo, he has said it from day one. His nutrition, his training, how he took care of himself is unlike, potentially anyone else. The only other guy I think who rivals him potentially is like Luka Modric, who's 36, still playing as a midfielder, right? Incredible level in Ancelotti's system that like puts so much stress on his midfielders where they have to run around and chase. Whereas Ronaldo has adapted his game. But to the question, it's about habits. You see which guys take care of themselves. And I honestly think that's part of why Mikel was comfortable with Aubameyang's contract. He as much as jokey as Aubameyang is, ask anyone about his training habits and his fitness, and they'll tell you how serious he is about it, right? And so I think that's part of why they were comfortable with him in that regard.
Okay. He's phenomenal though. He keeps himself fit, and he's probably never ever played on an injury. I think that's the whole key now, isn't it? Now I don't want to see Partey back until he's 100%. That's for sure. I know we're all desperate for Tottenham. So hi Lynn, welcome back to the show. And I know when my son had a broken femur, Where's the femur, Dr. Raj?
Femur is, I'm assuming she means the femur, which is like the thigh bone.
Right. That finished his football and he's 51 now and it's affected his hip and back. So, yeah. Oh,
Connects, it all connects, isn't it? It does.
All connects and it all catches up to you, right? So
absolutely. Brady's banana. Do you remember Arsene saying we got so many muscle injuries because our pitches were too good, firm, or did I dream that? Would that have anything to do with it?
I wouldn't think it's, to me, that would be more like joint injuries because you're hitting a harder surface every time rather than muscular injuries. Arsene has said some stuff too that I don't know really adds up or not. So he says something.
Very true.
He says some things.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, are you all right, Doctor? Do you have to go?
I can do two more. Let's do two more.
Two more questions, guys. Okay.
Get them in, people.
Albrecht, how much? Oh, this is interesting. How much does a different length of legs raise the risk for injury? Ramsey has this issue and wears an inlay in one of his shoes to minimize the impact on his movement.
Good question.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly will, right? I think Ramsey's, I'm assuming, was post injury is my guess. But yeah, if you have a true leg length discrepancy, right, it's just changing your mechanics, right? Because you're now more tilted to one side, so it's going to change it. The question becomes risk for injury. That I'd have to look into more. I don't know off the top of my head, but just theoretically, right, if you have a difference in leg length that's significant, it's going to just change some of your mechanics. That being said, the body is very adaptable. It's very robust. So I'm sure there's players who have no issue with it, right? So I think in Ramsey's case might be a little different because of what he had with that significant injury. So
I've got a question. So we'll end it on my question.
Go on.
Go on. Just, when a standard hamstring happens, yeah. For me, it's always, I always think, 6 to 8 weeks, they're gone. But are there different? No, go on. Is it different times for different
grades
areas?
Yeah.
There's, when they pull up and you go, oh, that's it. We lost them for 6 to 8 weeks.
There's multiple different, so there's no standard hamstring. That was my first thing. And so, it depends on what Albert was saying. First is grade, right?
Okay, yeah.
There's different types of scales, but just to make it simple, grade 1 is mild, grade 2 is moderate, grade 3 is severe. Grade 3 usually means the muscle has ripped off the bone, the tendon has ripped off. So grade 1, typically looking at 7 to 14 days, grade 2, 3 to 4 weeks, and then a grade 3, 6+ weeks, depending on if you need surgery or not. But then within that, it depends on the specific location of the tear as well. The closer it is to the tendons, either end of the muscle, the longer the rehab takes. And then you consider previous injury history, right? You consider the position the player plays, right? A goalkeeper might not need as much demand on the hamstrings as, let's say, right, a winger or an attacker, because we know hamstrings come under stress during high pace, right? So all those variables play a part, right? There's averages. I'll put out videos with averages, but there's so many variables, and that's why it's so difficult to really get a clean kind of timeline on some of these guys. And so, yeah, there's no catch-all typically for any muscular injury.
So just before you leave, it must be weird for you watching a match thing, because if someone gets injured, straight away we're all like doom and gloom, like, oh my God, what's he done? We're gonna have scans, we're gonna find out, is he out for a season? Yeah. You're sitting there like completely calm and knowing that, whatever it is, if he's touching his knee, you'll be able to work it out. So you must watch football just slightly different.
Yeah, I think so. Just a different lens to watch things through, right? I think the biggest example of that was when Martinelli turned his ankle during the warm-up last year in January. And I was, oh my God, how long does he out for? And Mikel was like, it doesn't look good. And I was like, well, dude, if you ever had an ankle injury, like, it's always painful to start.
Yeah.
Right. And then he came back and I was like, it's probably mild. He came back the next week. So I had like maybe 30 DMs about Martinelli's ankle. I was like,
oh, that's so funny. So is that what goes on your Twitter? People DM you and go, is Martinelli going to be out for how long? Is that what happens?
Absolutely, that's what
That's
happened.
Oh,
mad.
wow, really?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I get it, but it's mad. Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, me and Albert won't be DMing you. We'll be just tweeting you straight away. God forbid anything happens on
We
Sunday.
will.
Let's move on to Sunday quickly so you can
Yeah.
get your prediction and then you can go and see to your
Oh, man.
patients
I
because
hate
he's been.
predictions.
I know. Okay, you don't have to say a score, but do you think we're going to win and do you think we're going to get top 4?
Ooh.
Whew, that's tough. I think we're gonna. I do. It's so tough now with Leeds fighting for relegation because they're gonna fight very, very hard, obviously. And then with Marsh now too, they've been playing relatively well. I think the game being at home, knowing what's on the line, especially with Tottenham playing Liverpool right at Liverpool, I think the boys are going to be very motivated. I know Mikel's gonna, he's going to be on them, especially after a decent performance last time, right? Where we probably got away with some points there. But I think you're going to see a very motivated Arsenal side as well. So I do think we'll get the win. And I think based on Tottenham going to Liverpool, I think Liverpool obviously all to play for them, right? With the league. I do think top 4 will happen. I think this weekend's going to be the biggest inflection point. If it doesn't happen, I think it's going to be more so to do with this weekend than it would to do specifically with the derby coming up.
Unfortunately, for a few weeks, well, probably longer, I feel Tottenham are going to get something at Anfield. I do believe that we should and probably will beat Leeds, but next Thursday night is, whenever we play them, I think it's next Thursday, massive game. Dr. Raj, first of all, from everybody in the chat, Albert, myself, I could listen to you. I mean, I normally have a very short attention span. I cannot believe. I know I normally do. I get very bored very easy. I'm not 50 minutes and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, where has this time gone? You have definitely got to come back in the close season. I'm going to do some different shows and so many questions still. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
I've loved it. Big up for being a Gooner in LA.
Yes.
You don't have to get up too early, do you? It's not too bad on Sunday afternoon at 2:00 for us.
It's not too bad.
I'm going to tweet you from the ground. If anyone gets injured, I want to know what it is straight away, Dr. Raj.
All right.
And look at the thank yous. Thank you, Dr. Raj. It's so brilliant.
Pleasure, man.
My pleasure.
Brilliant.
Yeah, anytime. I'll love to be back.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the Always Arsenal show. And we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Take care, Mama. Take care.
Take care. Bye. I don't know what to say. I've just absolutely loved it.
Education in it is absolutely. If
Do
that
you know what though?
Yeah.
Honestly, Alb, I get so bored at things. My brain can't sit unless I'm interested in something. Yeah. But I've loved that, and I'm sitting here thinking, so much of what he says makes sense. Rush a player back just doubles up the injury. We're not rushing anyone back. I'm going to get really annoyed if we start rushing players back.
No, it's an education and an insight that we don't have as obviously medical professions. So in terms of like the fatigue side of it, the muscle injuries, the history, the dynamics of the way a player plays the game as well. You're taking all them factors. You don't really think of it at the time or when we do podcasting generally. But yeah, to get Dr. Raj on, that was brilliant, man. Some great stuff.
Do you know what? We follow each other, and I always find it really interesting. But as I said, Albert, you never know who is real, on social media. But I followed him for so long, and he knows so much that there was no way he couldn't be.
Encyclopedia,
yeah, I always like to get really good quality guests on here, including yourself. And I've got some really good guests coming up soon as well. And right, so we've got so much to get through. First of all, West Ham. I just want to say a big thank you to Alan Alger for treating me to a corporate ticket, lunch, drinks. The most amazing. It was a beautiful seat. Unfortunately, the only downside was that we couldn't celebrate the goals. Although, and I did say this on the Guns and Yellow Ribbons podcast this week, I was sitting with Jeff Arsenal and his lovely wife Dee. Now, Jeff Arsenal won't come on the pod because it's visual and he doesn't put his face out there. He'd come on audio. But his lovely wife, Dee, who's been a Gooner all his life, I did ask her and she said she might come on. So we're going to do a girls thing next month.
Get in
But
there.
I know. And she knows as much football as me and Jeff as well. So it's all cool. We had a great time. So where I was sitting, I was on the end of a row. So when Holding scores, they don't have like replays like we do at the Emirates.
Yes.
We don't even know who scored, right? I'm looking at Jeff. We're trying to not move. But there was a guy down the other side of the row that went like that. So I looked at him and I went, "Are you Arsenal?" And he went, "Yeah." So he comes running over in front of everyone and gives us like, what are you, fist bumps or whatever you call them, right? And we're like, yeah, everyone's looking. Everyone now knows. Everyone, right? So when they scored, we had a couple of interesting, how can I put this?
Looks.
Not looks, like finger pointing and things like that. But it was all good fun. Fantastic going corporate, beautiful. I was treated like an absolute princess. All of us were. But it's not the same. And I took the most amazing video of our fans. Our fans were fantastic. But it was, I was so thankful to go, Albert, because I couldn't get a ticket for love nor money. So hopefully we'll have Jeff Arsenal's wife on. She'll be able to spill the beans on our Jeff. But it was lovely sitting with him. I've never sat with Jeff at a football match. And obviously it was a bit false because we couldn't do much. But we had a little chat because obviously we had to be careful. Albert, we've got Leeds coming up, but I just want to talk to you quickly before we go off air. There's been a lot this week about, we've all had to fill in a survey about safe standing. Now, I want standing back at the games. Absolutely. At all the grounds. I don't want to stand. I sit in the East Stand upper, so they're not doing the uppers anyway, obviously. It will be lower. And I really thought everyone was going to go for it. But there's quite a few people I've noticed on social media that are saying, I sit lower tier. I stand when I want and I don't want to stand the whole game. So I don't know how they're going to do it because obviously the North Bank was all standing. The clock end was all standing. Are you in favour of it coming back? Will you go and stand in those areas?
Oh, I think you're the first person to even ask me about this. I know it was obviously brought up in the fans forum, wasn't it? Me personally, I don't mind either way, but I'll be honest, probably as I'm probably getting older, I prefer to probably sit down. But now, you know what? I get some people would love to do it because obviously it's been a long time, man. It's been spoken about for quite a while now, and you know, when they're going to try and officially pilot it, as I can't remember the exact date. I think the conversation was had, generally speaking, about like safe stand, people standing a few months ago now, I think, off the top of my head. But I think with this kind of question, I think it's just each their own, really. It is annoying sometimes if you're a person that does all the sit down, people stand up in front of you. So if there's a section in the ground, I don't know where they're going to do it, but I assume they've thought of an idea where they're going to start it. But there's a lot of people that will be in favor of it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing too much on social media in terms of people being against it. You probably see more of it than I have. But
I think because I put a tweet out and I said, everyone look in your inboxes because we're going to get a survey, fill it in, takes about 3-4 minutes. And quite a few people came back to me. You know, I mean, look at Lynn, for instance, at 75, I'd like a seat. Ha ha. I'm 53 this year and I want a seat. I've never, ever enjoyed standing. I don't know why, but I know there is so many, you know, so many benefits. The atmosphere, absolutely. And if people want to stand, absolutely. I just don't want them to stand in front of me. Exactly. No, and they do sometimes, but we're pretty good at in the uppers. You don't get many people standing up the whole time.
No.
Okay, so the fans forum came this week.
Yes.
Kept seeing tweets about it. Really interesting. Read a lot. And then obviously the big talking point is Louis Dunford's song, Angel.
Yes.
I mean, so last Friday afternoon, I heard about all this, mentioned it on the show, and then it's just gone mental for him. It's absolutely amazing. There's some Gooners that have written to the club before this and just said, can we use this song? It's amazing, blah, blah, blah. I absolutely love it and have not stopped playing it. And I can imagine 50, 60,000 of us singing this chorus would be wonderful. I only said 2 days before that, I'm sick of not having an anthem. You'll Never Walk Alone, Bubbles, you know, The Saints Go Marching On. I won't mention
Yeah.
that lot. But people have got amazing songs. Now, if we could, now it does seem today, Albert, and I'm going to ask you your opinion on it,
Yeah.
that Mr. Dunford has met Arteta because the power of social media, the power of getting, being able to go viral with things like this and contacting the club. It looks like, well, Fergus told me that they're going to play it before the Everton game. I want to know why it's not been played before Leeds, but I suppose they had to get it all sorted. Everyone in the chat, let me know what you think about the song, but I'm going to ask you, Albert, do you like it or not?
No, I do like it. And I think is that sometimes I'll say, I've spoken about sometimes in life, timing is everything sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think at this point of the season, I like the song, obviously. That's the first one. Let me get out of the way.
Good.
You make a good reference in regards to you talking about other clubs having their kind of their own thing in terms of a song and getting the atmosphere up. And like I said, timing's important because you'll for the guys that do go to the home games, particularly the Emirates, I think the atmosphere has got a lot better. Not just because obviously it helps if the team are doing well, and we're at the crunch time of the season, and you can't get a ticket, probably home or away, to be honest, the last few weeks. But I think the timing's perfect, Amanda, just because where we are this season, great song, and it brings there's a connect between the fans and the club. I'm not saying that's completely disappeared for some fans. It might have wavered a little bit over the years because of how the club's been run, probably on and off the pitch. But yeah, the timing's right. The timing, sometimes, things come along and it will help. You know what I mean? We've only got 4 games left, 2 home games, obviously. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they're gonna get. Everyone needs to learn the song. So
I love it. I know it. Danny don't like it. He's called it Mawkish Dribble. Hatchie said loved the song. Carl's asking Danny, why don't you like about it? But music is subjective, as I discussed the other night. Albrecht, birthday boy, says the song is great, but it's questionable if we can sing it all. Will there be a softer radio version, edit version with the chorus?
It's the chorus, isn't it? Is the main fit they're going to focus on, isn't it?
Well, Stuart's like, can't stand it, to be honest. It's what lovely old mum Dord have called a dirge. I absolutely love it. Yes, Cole, North London forever. It's not for everyone.
No, Amanda, when it starts, I think it's with anything new, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to get it off the ground running, and then you'll see an impact probably, I don't know, months going into the new season. Trust me on that.
Danny, I love Coldplay. No, but I know what you mean. It's that sort of intense passion stuff. I just think it would be brilliant, but let's see. Not everybody at the ground is on social media. Not everyone's going to know about this. Danny, I know, but it is, and he references Highbury in the song and the turnstiles and the game, and Arsenal are North London. I'm going to argue with you, Danny, on the podcast. But the main talking point, which I was going to start at the beginning of the show with, was Mr. Arteta extending his contract 24-25 season. Now, as you know, Albert, I'm very pleased, as you can imagine. What's your thoughts on this before we say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously at the time, I think I just kind of got into work, and I think it came out about 5 minutes earlier on the Twitter feed, and I saw some of the tweets of some people. And it comes back to what I said about the previous question in regards to songs. Sometimes it's about timing. For me personally, listen, he was in the last 2 years of his contract, so that was going to be spoken about anyway. Probably he'd been spoken about for ages anyway.
Yeah.
I'll get people's issue or being questionable about the timing because they're saying we haven't achieved anything yet. So if the season was done in the contract and it came out that the contract,
well, we have got European football.
That I do understand, but I think,
and that was the goal.
Yeah, it was. But I think the people were there, they kind of chomping in a bit to get Champions League football, aren't they? Listen, people want the away days to whether it be Europa League, Champions League, whatever. But that's another topic. But
well, we were, just think, you know what, Albert. But the problem is now it will feel quite deflating if we don't get top 4 because of it's in our hands. But that wasn't the aim for any Arsenal fans, was it? But weirdly, I think Mikel said that was his aim.
You know what? Yeah, It probably was, but it's sort of an answer to your sort of question. I think they could have waited the 4 games, man. I don't think it would have hurt him personally when the season's done, just to say, look, he's been offered a new contract. I saw some people more triggered than others, but that's more so just because they just don't like the manager.
Their agendas as well.
And that's what it comes down to. Yeah. So listen, he was gonna be here to stay anyway. Let's get that out of the way before any contract talk broke this morning. He was gonna stay anyway, So the fact of the timing, you can argue maybe they could have waited the 4 games, but it's done. And was it enough? Is it till 2026? Is it, or 2025? Is it
25? But it's interesting because Robert's saying I think the timing could have been a bit better. They could have just waited a bit longer unless they have done it for the players to give them signs of some kind of encouragement boost. But as Albert said, Robert, he was staying anyway. There was no chance. Even if he doesn't get top 4, he's staying, isn't he? So, and correct, Carl, the Arteta outlaw are losing their minds. It's ridiculous.
I saw some tweets today, man.
Oh, and
devastated. I'm like, oh my God, come on, man.
Oh, it's so dramatic. Honestly, you call women dramatic. Nobby Clark, top 6 was all I expected this season. Yes, Nobby. I would say 99% of us were hoping that as well.
Yeah.
Young man. Okay. Young Albert. Leeds on Sunday. What's your thoughts?
I've said it already. I think Leeds, I knew they conceded a lot of goals, Amanda, but they've conceded 72 goals this season. That's the most in the league. They're a team that's Jesse March has got them playing, to be honest, a little bit better, but they're in the mixer. They need to come to our ground and get a result. But I see us getting a 3-1 win personally, because our clean sheets are dried up. I don't think our last clean sheet was away to Villa. But we're scoring more goals, 9 goals in 3 games, which is crazy considering the amount of issues we've had finishing teams off. But I just think because Leeds are all over the place in terms of the way they leak goals, Amanda, I can see us getting a 3-1 victory. And I think Eddie owes them a little bit as well. He didn't have a lot of minutes at Leeds when he's on loan there, so I'm sure he'll be looking to hammer a couple of goals in as well.
Well, we've got 2 4-0s here. Danny 4-0, Albrecht 4-0. What's your prediction?
3-1 Arsenal.
3-1 Arsenal.
Yeah.
I'm actually not going to predict. I hated predicting anyway. But I feel a little bit positive, which is probably not always a good idea. Right. So next week, I don't want to talk about Tottenham because we've got Leeds first.
Yeah, get Leeds out of the way.
But the only thing I will say is I'm not doing a post-game show. If for any reason we win, then I'm going to come and do a post-game show. If I'm not there, again, I may be offered a ticket.
Yes, get there, Amanda. Go on.
I don't know if I'm going to go because I had a very bad experience the last time about 5 years ago, and I said I'd never go back. I'd love to be with the Arsenal fans, but
Are you not tempted because it's like
I am
because for many Gooners, they've not had the chance to go to that stadium yet.
No, I understand that, but getting out there, Albert, is so not nice. Trust me. And the thing is, I've just even arranged a lift. So I've actually got a lift home if I need one. So it's one of these things where I'm going to be tempted, but I'm not sure I've got the balls to go because of what happened last time. So
okay,
I think, but it's a very important match, and I know so many people going. If I'm at home, if we win, I'll do a show. I'm actually going to try and do a show the night before, but I'll keep you all updated. Please, everyone, subscribe. If you subscribe to the channel, you're going to know when my shows are on because I normally set them up 3 or 4 days before, and you can go and have a look. Excuse me. Please press like if you like the show. Yes, I don't know how you can't like this show with Dr. Raj because it's just been fantastic. And my boy Albert.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry, everybody. No, we're not doing predictions, Cole, for Tottenham yet. That will be coming. No. Thank you, Danny. And thank you for always supporting the show. Really appreciate your retweets. Everyone, if you're on Twitter, if you could just retweet, that would be fantastic. I got offered a ticket and I sold mine, Robert. I so understand that. I do get it. I also want to be there, but I think it's going to be a little bit tasty. Everyone, have a wonderful Friday evening, what's left of it. Have a great weekend. I will be at the Emirates on Sunday. I'm sure you will be, Albert, too.
I will be there. I will.
In the sunshine for a change. Let's hope we can beat dirty Leeds. Everyone, thank you for joining the show. Thank you for your questions. I've loved this show. I love doing
brilliant.
this show. Show number 17 is over. Have a good evening. Always Arsenal.